From LALATE News headquarters in Santa Monica, this is the Midday Report on LALATE.
It's a big day here of home LALATE with incredible great news about your stimulus check update of 2022 with a new $15,000 to $80,000 of stimulus checks going out, announced just minutes ago. This is live and direct from Santa Monica, California. You're tuning in for Home Edition. If you're watching 11 o'clock or 7 o'clock tonight, the encore performance, I Stand with Ukraine. We'll go over the latest details of what's happening in Ukraine today and how it's impacting a new industry at home, wheat. Yes, it's not a risk that has been assessed into the financial markets, and this risk could bring us into a major economic downturn. I'll have a look at the situation unfolding at the moment. We'll also be looking at what's happening in Odessa and also the immigration situation across the land as refugees grow to nearly 2 million overnight. And then we'll be looking at what's happening with your big money. But first, we're going to start with the incredible great news about what's happening with the Build Back Better Act. For stimulus recon, all those incredible checks going out. And those checks are getting bigger by the moment as CR for stimulus just around the corner. And now, $15,000, $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 of checks announced by the president today. Oh my goodness. I have a preview of what's happening tonight on Evenings LA's 5 o'clock, 1 hour special report on all these incredible checks and more. Then we'll be looking at CR for Stimulus 1, 2, and 3, and 4.0, SS 300, and how it's impacted by the rate of inflation, and how Jay Powell's trying to bring those inflation prices points down. We'll be looking at the situation of oil commodities and why oil is out of control and why the White House's Deputy Treasury Secretary, when answering questions about oil, today was evasive, unresponsive, and not solving the situation at home. All the latest details on that financial element of how Vladimir Putin's acts of aggression are affecting everyone and what the White House is doing to pivot across the board. It's a breaking news report. It's live on air, direct from Santa Monica, California, but also for our viewers overseas. As I stand with Ukraine, you should as well. The latest details of what's happening overseas and back at home, from the shores of Santa Monica to the shores of Odessa. The prayers are with the people of Ukraine, and the breaking news, the breaking financial news, starts right now from Santa Monica, California, as Home LALATE gets underway this big day. The latest details we need to know right off the bat is that for stimulus recon, the Build Back Better Act by the President of the United States will be passed. But the great news is that overnight, more checks were announced. And what are they? They're coming up on Home. Hey, good afternoon, everybody. I hope you're having a beautiful day and hope the weather is good where you are. Along the coast here in Santa Monica, California, the weather is looking beautiful, but the economics is changing by the minute. We'll be looking at those economics in just a second. But the great news is that $15,000 to $80,000 of checks could be landing in your wallet. And this is a time of need, and we have the incredible information about it. It's a preview of tonight's Evenings LA show. But first, we're going to start with the Build Back Better Act. The President of the United States reassured the American people during the State of the Union address this week that all of those checks in the Build Back Better Act, the forced stimulus recon, will become a law. There is 3 clusters of checks and 3 add-ons of checks that you qualify for, and I'll feature them more in detail tonight on that 5 o'clock 1 hour special broadcast. But let's look over them broadly right now, those incredible checks in that Build Back Better Act. At least $15,000 to $60,000 of checks, 3 clusters, 3 add-ons. You qualify for them, and how much are they, and how do you get it? Let's go over the details starting right now. Those checks are incredible, and in that first cluster of checks is hazard pay, $4,000 of elder care, $4,000 of care for young children, the CTC, the home repairs, the $550 check for the college students, and then the home repairs if you live in a low-income community. All these incredible checks across this Build Back Better Act amount to at least about $15,000 to $60,000 of checks. But let's turn to that first add-on of checks, and it comes from here in Southern California. Maxine Waters got it in there. She's our legislator here in Southern California, and is money for the purchase of your first home. needed for millions of Americans, and it's a little bit less than $25,000. The second add-on of checks gets even better across the board. In that second cluster, paid leave and home repairs. Paid leave, you get to stay home from work, and this could be $4,000 to $6,000 a person. Home repairs to weatherize your home. Then when we turn to the second add-on of checks, we get even more. Millions of Americans don't have home health care, but Joe Biden got into the fourth stimulus recon. It's a little bit less than $250 billion, and it's a second of three add-ons. Let's turn to the third cluster of checks, free internet for all. Don't have to wait for fourth stimulus because it's currently available under second stimulus. Reach out to the volunteers featured at the commercial break. Then they got checks for independent contractors, farmers, and seniors. 2 checks for seniors on the House, 3 coming on the Senate. First, lowering the eligibility age of Medicare, dental, vision, hearing, and the Medicaid gap fix. The third add-on of checks, of course, are the ones that make so many viewers so excited because it's even more checks. MSC. These are checks to be added on the Senate side in addition to the Build Back Better checks that already have about $15,000 to $60,000. What are MSCs? Monthly IRS stimulus checks for the same people who got a third stimulus check. Later in this video, I'm going to show you how to get $15,000 to $80,000 of new stimulus checks announced by the White House today. And the eligibility for those are exactly the eligibility for an MSC. Same number all over the place. When we look at MSC, single individual, $75,000 less, you get it. Married couple, $150,000 less, you get it. Double it. Family of 4, quadruple it. It's not California stimulus. In California, we get a surfboard instead. It comes by direct deposit. That's one on the tax return. Otherwise, in the mail. It's not income, and it's not taxable, and it's offered nationwide. The amount, $2,000 the first month, $1,000 thereafter for up to 6 months, says the legislators. This is a provision that would be added to the Build Back Better Act that already has at least $15,000 to $60,000 of checks, and this is addition to that is $50,000 to $80,000 of checks I'm about to get to in just a second. What's the opportunity to get a check before an MSC? The opportunity before that is the CR for stimulus. The CR for stimulus, the advocacy of this channel, made history in 2020 when we got a stimulus check in millions of Americans' hands. Well, another CR is in front of us, and the deadline is just a few days away. In mid-March, another CR is teed up. A continuing resolution, CR, a budget bill. And no less than 5 weeks ago, I advocated for the inclusion of another stimulus check in the CR. $1.5 trillion, a discretionary spending, bipartisan support, done negotiations, House and Senate, Republicans and Democrats, all lined up. And while the president tried to take a little bit of the money in the last few days for COVID, it's $1.5 trillion of discretionary funds. Enough for a $2,000 stimulus check. So you want to advocate for its inclusion. Just like we did in 2020. In 2020, this channel made history because I came up with the idea to put a stimulus check in the December 2020 continuing resolution. It went out, and I made history, and the viewership of this channel made history because you got that check. Second stimulus, however, never happened. So that is a CR for stimulus, the latest breaking details on that. More about it tonight on that evening's 1-hour broadcast at 5 o'clock, a 1-hour special report. But let's go right into SS300, which is next opportunity and the fastest thereafter. SS300 was created by Elizabeth Warren, initially as SS200, to raise your benefits up $200 a month if you're on SSI or SSDI, Social Security, railroad benefits, or veterans benefits. Then adopted as a campaign promise by Joe Biden, and then part of his presidential platform at joebiden.com. It works upon a very simple concept to replace COLA as your benchmark and use inflation. Inflation is at its highest price point now, so you want to swap out with inflation right now. Why? Because this guy, Jay Powell, your head of the Federal Reserve, his task is to bring inflation down, and he's starting to bring it down. But the great news this week continued across the board when looking at inflation and looking at what Jay Powell said. His comments were the following, that I'm not going to come in too hard on inflation. Good. Jay Powell has the following tools. He has 5 meetings in 5 months, 1 meeting per month, to raise interest rates to bring inflation down. Now, no less a few months ago, that we thought maybe he'd do several raises per meeting or larger raises per meeting. Not going to happen because of, I stand with Ukraine. Vladimir Putin's acts of aggression are leaving economic uncertainty, and so Jay Powell said, I'm going to do a half basis point this month of March. That was what I expected him to say. I didn't expect the great news that came out thereafter. He gave us guidance, which he doesn't have to, of what he's doing after that. He said, I'm doing a quarter basis point, the smaller, the easier push. And then I stay with a quarter basis point because I think it's okay at the moment. I'm watching Putin, and if I have to pivot and do a little bit more, I will. But at the moment, I think it's fine. What does that mean? He believes that inflation is still with us and will slowly come down, but we don't need to bring it down too fast because we have disruptions across the board. And those disruptions are important to understand. I'm going to get to them in a second. But this is why Joe Biden needs to make the phone call now. Call the Social Security Administrator. As viewers have been advocating on social media, Purple Power, do it right now. Call the Social Security Administrator, Joe, and say, swap out COLA with inflation. Millions of Americans are feeling the punch at the pump or the punch at the supermarket. Inflation's kicking, and you need a little bit more money. Certainly, $200 more per month is what you promised us in 2020 at a time of economic issue then. Well, you need the money right today. And guess what is more indication of why you need the money? The February job reports released minutes ago, obtained by LALATE News, suggest that millions of Americans are not doing particularly well. Non-farm payroll rose number of jobs at 678,000 February, higher than expected, 440,000 new jobs. So more people took jobs, but why? Analysts believe that people took jobs because inflation is hurting them too much. And this is the indication. Wages increased 5.1% year to date, based upon the new numbers released today. You already know what inflation is. It's not 5.1%. Inflation is tracking 12% in some states. Nationally, it's about 7 to 8%. So your wages went up less and your inflation went up more, meaning you had to go back to work because you couldn't afford not working because of inflation. And a lot of people who had retired had gone into forced retirement and returned back to the workforce. That's why Joe needs to swap out COLA with inflation for SS 300. And that is why you want him to do it now before inflation comes down later this year to about 4%. When it comes down to 4%, then later the year, you'll get about $100 because your benefits get reassessed by the end of the year. That would be SS 300. And that is not in reinventing the wheel, folks. This is what Joe Biden promised and still has promised at joebiden.com. Another issue that really surprised everyone, and if you watched it live on Mornings LA today, you heard it first. Wow. You're going to see more about it tonight on Evenings LA, but let me tell you what it is. And you may have heard about it in the opening teaser of this video. New stimulus checks, $15,000 to $80,000. That's 80 are going out, and you can get them out of nowhere. Major announcement by the United States today said that it's now making available new rounds of checks for millions of Americans. So what is it? How do you get it? Let me go over broadly what it is, and I'm going to go over details of it because it's very detailed, and it's really great. And it's featured tonight on that 1 hour special report of Evenings LA. It's the U.S. Department of Treasury, Janet Yellen's department's new Homeowners Assistance Fund, providing $15,000 to $80,000 per household for about $10 billion of federal funding, going live today in some locations. It's administered on a state level, and it's for homeowners. But the amount and the qualification and the items it covers are absolutely incredible. In the year and a half in which this channel has gotten viewers hundreds of millions of dollars, we've never seen some of these items ever covered on this channel. First, it'll cover things like mortgages, property taxes, homeowners insurance, association fees, utilities, certain home repairs, and the average payment will be $50,000 to $80,000. Eligibility is much exactly like a stimulus check. Remember the graphic earlier? The individuals, $75,000 or less, married couple, $150,000 less, family of four, same across the board. Moreover, you don't have to be behind on the money. So what is this called? It's called the Homeowners Assistance Fund. The Homeowners Assistance Fund, administered by the U.S. Department of Treasury, but done on a state level. I'll be featuring it tonight on Evenings LA, and as more data comes available, I will include it in the membership newsletter for the members. If you haven't become a member, the link is on the video. If you've been with this channel on day one, I launched this channel on April 25th, 2020, and at that time, we were 3 days away from PUA going live in about 4 or 5 states. I had viewers get ready, and as soon as it went live, they applied, they got the money. Other states like Florida and Texas were delayed, but when they went live, they got the money weeks thereafter. This is a program about to go live. So in many cases, the money is in place, but the programs have not gone online. It's not available in the state of New York, however. There you go. Now, the incredible news is that the White House has to deal not only with Vladimir Putin's acts of aggressions, but also has to deal with his economic impact. And that economic impact has been discussed in some part, but in other parts has not. What's at issue? Wheat? Yes. The toast is toasting, but it won't be toasting if we don't have wheat. And with the Black Sea under battle right today in Ukraine, this is a major economic element that has not been assessed by the financial markets of the United States, analysts now believe. The impact on wheat will be discussed in just a second on this channel. But first up is, of course, the impact on oil. Major interview happened today going over what's going on with Vladimir Putin and his impact on oil back in the United States. And the Treasury Secretary under Joe Biden, in my opinion, was evasive, unresponsive, giving false information and false facts. So, is the White House doing what it needs to do with oil back in the United States? All the latest details across the board and how it impacts your wallet. Then we'll be going back to the battleground in Ukraine. What is the situation in Odessa? What is the situation in the Black Sea? What about that nuclear facility? And what is Vladimir Putin's next act of aggression likely to be? What is his focus? And what has changed in the last few hours? And what is likely to change tonight? All those details and more that financially impact you and the humanitarian issue, the refugee issue, the situation as partner countries have done sometimes very little, and why they need to do more. Those incredible details coming up as a home LATE edition of I Stand with Stimulus, I Stand with Ukraine, and I Stand with World Peace continues. But first, here is a little bit about the community page. I'll be back with you in 60 seconds as this broadcast continues. If you want money right now, not 5 days from now, and not 5 weeks from now, then reach out to the community page. The volunteers can help you find that money for rent and utilities. That's at news.la.com/community. The community page features a series of volunteers who are viewers like you. They can help you find rent, utilities, SNAP, food benefits, mortgage assistance, and help you with eviction moratorium questions as well. They're Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram individuals. Reach out to them and indicate the city and state you're from, and they'll get back to you shortly. That's a community page. Volunteers working for you, viewers helping one another. Stay with LA for more. Join LALATE Daily for the excitement of the new LALATE live daily. The excitement starts on mornings LALATE at 9 a.m. Home LALATE returns at 11 a.m. daily. And then afternoons LALATE at 1 p.m. Join us daily as the excitement continues live from Santa Monica on LALATE. And you're watching a continuation of Home LALATE. I support Ukraine. Evenings LALATE at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 8 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, and 7 o'clock Central Time will feature more about this breaking, unfolding, developing details of Ukraine and Russia. A 1-hour special broadcast, the #1 most watched financial news show in prime time that goes over your money and how Vladimir Putin's acts of aggression are impacting everyone financially across the globe. We're going to go more about those details right in just a second, but here's a preview of what's happening later tonight. When we look at the situation of oil across the board, the White House has not been particularly fluid on the situation. And today, Deputy Treasury Secretary Wally Adeyemo appeared on broadcast media to answer a series of questions about what the U.S. is doing to ramp up production of oil back in the United States, as Vladimir Putin's dependency of oil for other countries besides the U.S. continues to labor on. What happened? I have all those details coming up right now. But first, I want you part of this incredible family. So go into this video right now and subscribe. You're watching the #1 most watched financial news channel in prime time, LALATE. And I want you not to miss that show any night. It's 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time tonight. So hit that subscribe button. Like the video, 2,000-3,000 likes, and consider becoming a member. All right, let's go into the details of what's unfolding with oil and gasoline. Gasoline is exported from Russia to neighboring countries that don't produce oil, like Italy. As soon as Russia invaded Ukraine, the price of oil went up. But what also happened was that supply chain disruption occurred. The way that oil works is very simple. The more oil available, the cheaper it is. The less oil available, the more expensive it is. Once Russian oil was no longer available, then the price of gasoline went up. There's importance to know here. You cannot have pricing of gasoline out of control, because if your gasoline prices go out of control, your economy spirals into recession and may stay 2 to 3 years in recession. Unemployment will grow and stagflation will grow. So how do you stabilize the price of oil? Very simply, release more oil. Where do you get it? You either have it in storage or you produce it and then release it. In the case of the United States, we produce oil in West Texas, and we can release more of it stored and then produce more of it. In the case of other countries like Italy, they don't make a lot of oil, so they're dependent upon oil coming from Russia, unless the oil is provided by a partner country that can step forward and release it. The breaking news yesterday, featured on this channel, was that partner allied countries of the United States did not help us yesterday. The OPEC Plus countries met, and United Arab Emirates, who the United States has been very good to, has millions and millions of stockpiles of gasoline that could release to our partner countries, like Italy. And during that OPEC Plus meeting, they decided they weren't going to release any oil and keep the current release at issue. Why is this important to note? Because if you have gasoline stored, you can release it to those partner countries. But if you don't release it from storage, then the end result is you can't pump more gasoline. And this is not good news. Has the White House done anything with those partner countries? No. Has the White House done anything to realign gasoline from countries like Japan and Korea to countries like Italy that have normally been dependent upon Russian oil? Not enough. But that's not the bigger issue that Americans understand very well. The biggest issue that Americans understand very easily, very easy to grasp, is that we make our own oil, and we can make more oil. So why aren't we making oil? This is about a very, very basic concept. A high school student understands this concept. We produce gasoline in West Texas. We pump it out. But if we can also pump more gasoline or pump less gasoline, the more we pump, the price goes down. Pretty simple concept, wouldn't you think? We have gasoline tracking at $5 a gallon. If you're in the live chat, write how much you're paying for gasoline right now. Now, before we go into the analysis, let me do something historically. 2 or 3 years ago, we had a gasoline spike, and we went to $4 a gallon in many parts of the country. At the time, the U.S. economy was smaller. We're a bigger economy, so we can survive at $5 a gallon for a little bit of time. We were a smaller economy then. But we can't sustain $6 a gallon or $7 or $8 a gallon, which is where we're tracking to. So what's happening? West Texas gasoline producers have gone on record saying, hi, we can produce more gasoline for Americans and bring the price down. Don't you want the price to go down? We want to help you. We're Americans also. We want to help our fellow Americans produce more gasoline, bring the price down. They have reached out to the White House to get comment. And the White House has not responded to them. So what happened this morning? Deputy Treasury Secretary Wally Andahu, who's a 40-year-old Yale graduate with not particularly a lot of experience about anything, appeared on broadcast media and was asked, has the White House reached out to West Texas oil producers to say, can you produce a little bit more oil to bring down the price of gasoline? He refused to answer the question. Asked again, refused to answer the question. Then he was asked the next question. West Texas producers say you and no one in the White House has reached out to them. And they need to have comment whether they can produce more oil because they understand the White House doesn't want to produce a lot of oil. You want to be dependent upon energy and clean energy and things like electric cars. Again, refused to answer the question. It got actually worse. Then he started to fuel fake facts. He was asked about where we are right now, and he says, we're currently really at almost the high level of gasoline production in Texas, based upon historical numbers the last 10 years. 10 years ago, you would have been 30 years old, and that's actually incorrect data. We're not at the high level of gasoline production in Texas currently. So wrong data, evasive on the issue. What's happening? It's a progressive versus moderate Democrat platform where progressives don't want to produce oil. But in a time of economic uncertainty, we have to produce more oil just for now to stabilize our economy. Why? This is the issue. We're currently tracking, based upon the day of this recording, somewhere between 105 and 120 a barrel for gasoline. It ain't gonna cut it for more than a few weeks, folks. We're really on the edge here. Yes, in the last 5 days of this channel, we've tracked from anywhere from 100 to 120. Today we're 114. Yesterday we were 119 by evenings LA. So we're tracking in very dangerous territory. It's moved very quickly. It can go to 150 in a blink of an eye. We're only 7 days into this act of aggression by Vladimir Putin. 150 is economic despair. Wall Street analysts have assessed the risk, and they're modifying their assessment. They initially said we can survive anything under 110 for about a few months. Now they say that we can survive anything about 120. Now they say 150. Actually, let me take that back. Now they're saying anything above 120, 2 years of recession. 2022 and 2023 and 2024 recession if we stay at 120. We were at 120 last night, folks. So this is not good. A bipartisan group of legislators are trying to ban Russian oil, which is another issue. Because you ban Russian oil, then it makes the price of gasoline go up even higher, and then you got to get that oil release. A lot of pivoting across the board. Meantime, what is going on with something else that I'm actually more concerned about? It's not oil, it's wheat. Wall Street analysts now believe that they have assessed the oil risk into the market because of Vladimir Putin's acts of aggression. They've assessed potentially gasoline going to 120 a barrel or 125. But they now believe they have not assessed the risk of wheat causing us to spiral into recession. Why wheat? This is something that millions of Americans have never seen or heard of. We saw the energy crisis in the 1970s, where long lines were at the pump with gas stations. But we've never seen a crisis where wheat spirals an economy or our economy into recession. It's something no one has ever heard of, and it's something that's just getting traction today, and is a major new topic on this channel as well. The price of wheat is spiraling out of control today. Chicago wheat was up 51 to 75 cents, Kansas City wheat up 75 cents, and Minnesota wheat up 16 to 80 cents. The issue of wheat is Vladimir Putin. The Black Sea is a major producer and exporter of wheat across the globe. And when we say wheat, we include similar products like corn. And what happens is that when that disruption is occurring, it doesn't disrupt for just 1 month. It can disrupt for years to come. What's at issue? When we talk about oil, we're talking about oil stored in a room that goes in a barge that arrives in 2 weeks. Pretty simple analysis. You don't have it this week, but you'll get it in 2 weeks. Pretty easy? Yeah, it's pretty easy. But when we talk about wheat, and then suddenly the field is bombed by cluster bombs from Vladimir Putin, then you don't have wheat this year, you don't have wheat next year, you may not have wheat for 5 years. And suddenly that disrupts things not for 2 weeks, but for years to come. That wheat disruption is causing American growers to pivot and also our supply chain. What does this mean? Millions of Americans are already commenting in the live chat how they see the price of wheat at the supermarket or their local retailer going up dramatically since Vladimir Putin's acts of aggression. And this is something that's really starting to become an issue in America that we didn't really anticipate when we saw this happening. What's at issue? Whether it's soybeans or wheat, the situation is causing millions of companies to pivot. Prominent North American buyer Algeria normally would never buy wheat from France. That's not its policy. But now it's lifted its exclusions on France wheat and has had to now bring in wheat from France because the Black Sea, which you're looking at here in the beautiful town of Kherson, desecrated by Vladimir Putin this week, is now offline. The Black Sea is a big provider of wheat to the world economy. And with that Black Sea world economy of wheat now desecrated, not just for a week, but potentially years to come, the countries now need to pivot. How do you reassess that risk? This is huge, folks, because when you can't assess risk, the situation is you don't know where your economy is going. This is a little bit more than a complex situation of barrels of gasoline are not on a barge, you're not going to be here in 2 weeks. This is a situation that can go on for years to come. What is Vladimir Putin's approach right tonight, and what is his approach in the next few days? Let's go over those details right now. When you look at the beautiful town of Odessa, feature on this channel the last 2 nights on Evenings LALATE, our special 1-hour broadcast, again tonight at 5 o'clock Pacific Standard Time, 8 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. His focus is not to inherently destroy the town, at least not yet. His focus is to control its industry, which is the port. Odessa is the major port of Ukraine. And Vladimir Putin, his approach is to take Odessa so that he can control the major port that controls shipping and importing into the country of Ukraine. On the Black Sea, Odessa is very important to the equation of how Ukraine can survive as an economy and also how it can survive in its ability to provide exports to neighboring countries that are dependent upon it. It is a different situation than Gershon, which was detailed the day before on this channel, that was desecrated. Gershon, with a population of about 300,000 residents, is about 120 miles along the coast from Odessa. And Russian troops have already desecrated that town, but then headed to Odessa. The focus in Odessa is a little bit different, however, across the board. In the focus of Odessa, he's looking to control the port. And if that sounds familiar, it should. What is Vladimir Putin's approach overnight? His approach overnight was to take a nuclear power plant, this time in the center of Ukraine. Now, he used this nuclear power plant for two purposes. One, for a propaganda machine, and second, for a strategic move. The propaganda campaign was to send fear into Americans that the nuclear power plant was somehow similar to Chernobyl. Untrue. The nuclear power plant is not powered like Chernobyl. And so there was no radiation fear or radiation detection at issue. That's what his playbook was to send a fear that he was going to take the power plant and somehow cause a nuclear reaction. Not true. And social media saw bots on social media heating up from Russia, trying to make people think that this nuclear event overnight was another Chernobyl. Untrue. But Vladimir Putin has another focus with that nuclear power plant in the central part of Ukraine, and he's achieved his goal already. In taking the power plant, he is now controlling 80% of the power of Ukraine. Yes, 80% of the power of Ukraine is powered by this power plant. And now Vladimir Putin has control of it. It's just like how he's trying to impact our economies with oil and gas, how he's trying to control the ports by taking Odessa, trying to disrupt the export of wheat to impact countries on the other side of the globe. It's an economic play. As we try to sanction Vladimir Putin, he's trying to make his particular moves that impact us financially at home as well. I'll jump in the live chat with you in just a second and see some of your reaction to the news as well. Where do I believe Vladimir Putin's next move is? A series of analyst reports suggest that this is certainly not far from over. Since day one of this recording on this channel covering the Ukraine and Russia situation back in October of last year, I saw this to be the major event of 2022. I started featuring Ukraine and Russia back before Halloween because the number of troops and the proliferation of military deployment suggested that this was not going to be a 10-second event. We're into week 2 at this point, and we're certainly not seeing de-escalation at all from Vladimir Putin. The refugee situation growing by the hour. 500,000, 1 million, heading to 10 million. And the desecration with confirmed cluster bombs across the land growing by the hour. But the question is next. What is next? There are some reports of nuclear reactors in neighboring countries now concerned because Vladimir Putin may be focusing on them as well. We need more allegiance from our partner countries that can release strategic oils, that can realign gasoline to increase production at home, that can increase production for our partner countries, and that can ease the strain like wheat and agrarian in a time of war. In a time of acts of aggression, we need to pivot. This is not a time to worry about the environment for the next 3 weeks. We need to protect our economies and protect families and mothers and children. Let's jump in the live chat right now and see some of your comments that you have about the situation. And perhaps you have another commentary about the situation that I haven't covered. Doe, my dear, says we need to open our oil back up. We have to open it back up. Absolutely. Great comment. Patricia says, same prayers to everyone and keep faith. Here's some more incredible comments coming into the live chat. We need to get things going, said one viewer. Don't be depressed. Keep your heads up and we will get through this, says Jonathan. Wonderful comment. In New Mexico, Laverne says she's paying $3.70 for gasoline to fill up my gas. It took $20 to fill up. In California, it's tracking at $5 a gallon right now. And that is not sustainable because guess what? It's actually heading to $6 in the last 24 hours as well. The situation for gasoline is trending. And when we talk about the impact of gasoline, what's important to know is that you're going to really feel the pinch in about late March because the gasoline you're currently paying for at the pump was bought weeks before Vladimir Putin's acts of aggression. So the impact on the price point is not felt until about 30 days out thereafter. Incredible comments. Let's jump back more into live chat and see what other people are saying across the land. I see Melissa. I see Laverne. We even have oil in Michigan as well as Canada. Closest neighbor, says Jana. And absolutely true. Drill, baby, drill, says Extreme Restorations. Absolutely. We need to jump on this, says Olivia. Well said. With that, what do you need to know going into tonight's evening's 1 hour broadcast across the land? What you need to know going into tonight's broadcast is that the situation in Ukraine is unfolding by the minute and by the hour, but most analysts believe that this is going to be a several weeks event. I had said this on day one. You're wondering what the bottom of my shirt says, I stand for Ukraine. It's a little bit out of frame. I've always said this is going to be a several weeks event, at least. It's not going to be a few days. What happens? Hard to say. There was reports that the negotiations between Ukraine and Russia has resulted in a safe harbor corridor for women and children to safely flee out of Ukraine to Russia, and that Ukrainian and Russian officials agreed not to comment too detailed on this in the press. So that is one good element of news coming out tonight. The second good element of news is that more aid is on way to the refugees in Romania and also in Poland. The other element of good news is that more assistance has been dedicated by NATO forces and Western allies to the country of Ukraine. But the issues unfolding very dramatically. It's at times like this that the comments by President Zelensky in the last 24 hours have been excellent, where he has not negated the severity of the situation so that we understand it's ramping up. Meantime, some analysts believe that when you look at the economic situation and the military situation, there may be a divergence currently among US population and European populations. Why? Because European populations first are closer in proximity to the battle, and two are more dependent upon these economic elements a little bit more than we are, because we are not as much an importer of these items as these countries are. But that is not something we should negate, because while we're not part of the economic community in the United States, we're dependent upon their stability, and we can't have world economies go under. Today, major statements in Brussels suggesting that the situation has gone into barbarism at this point. That Vladimir Putin, his acts of aggressions now include cluster bombs. Very, very serious and very, very desecrating. But the next question is, what will the next 7 days look like? And when I first made the first I Stand With Ukraine's video on this channel, it was a very different situation than it is now 7 days later. The question is, what is it going to look in 2 weeks from now? And I hope as a society, we stay as strong as we have been on this community. I praise the Purple Parrot community. Last night, some people in the live chat had some wonderful comments. I don't know what particular state they were in, but they said where they live, people are putting lighted candles in their windows in honor of soldiers fighting the suppression overseas. Whether it's the NATO forces on ready in NATO countries or our U.S. soldiers who are on ready in NATO lands, safe, currently not on Ukrainian soil, or Ukraine men and women battling those acts of aggression by Vladimir Putin on their home ground. Those wonderful candles is a wonderful imagery that is among the many imageries as well. This morning I watched one of my favorite broadcast personalities. She's Polish, and she had a beautiful blue and yellow silk scarf down her neck. It was absolutely so sedate. That's such a clear image. And while this set has always had blue and yellow, it it just sort of resonated quite well. The yellow surfboard, the blue vases, it just all sort of resonated well. I stand with Ukraine, and you should as well. Join me tonight at that 5 o'clock Pacific Standard Time, 8 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, 1 hour special broadcast. We'll be going over more about your money with these incredible $15,000 to $80,000 of new stimulus checks for Americans who are in need across the board. And then we'll be going back into CR for Stimulus 1.0, the MSE, the Build Back Better Act, the big money at issue with third stimulus. As one viewer got a lifetime of benefits overnight. Oh my goodness. Then we go into this situation unfolding back in the States with oil and wheat and why these economies need to be stabilized across the land. Have a beautiful night and have a beautiful day if you're watching it live on air. If you're watching the show live, you're next going to see Afternoons LA at 1 o'clock. And if you're watching this taped, then you're going into Evenings Extra coming up. Stay informed, stay focused, and stay with LA for more.